last week, you may have heard I spoke with Springbank Honey owner Stephen Brown, who was upset to say the least that, in his words, was forced to burn 10,000 bee boxes 2 weekends ago. The reason, according to the AFB Pest Management Plan Management Agency, they had identified spores of American foul brood, or AFB, in his shed in Canterbury. Now, the disease has been in New Zealand for more than a century and it can be fatal for hives. Now, Stephen, though, portrayed the agency's approach, testing the equipment that was not in use, as excessive and an overreach of power. He says in the past, beekeepers have only required to monitor working hives by watching for signs of sickness rather than testing empty boxes for spores. The chairman of the AFB Pest Management Plan Management Agency, my gosh, it's a mouthful, is Mark Dingle. He argued the practice was fair and said it would continue to safeguard all beekeepers, adding Stephen's case is probably at the extreme end, but it's what's required in order to manage AFB. He stood by all the actions the agency made in Brown's case, but one of the central points of the argument was the destruction of gear that was potentially contaminated. Brown claims he spent $50,000 a year fighting AFB and followed protocol when his hives became infected. So obviously there's a few discrepancies here, and at the stake is a business and the loss of what Stephen claimed was $2 million worth of gear and no compensation. Both sides believe they're right. Joining me now is the Minister of Biosecurity, Andrew Hoggard. Andrew, thank you for being on the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leah.
Now, Andrew, look, I will not pretend to understand the structure here of how this works. I mean, I know there's MPI. I know you as the Minister of Biosecurity. Can you explain what is the structure behind this?
Yeah, so, I mean, what we've got is what they call a National Pest Management Plan. These exist for a number of diseases, so one of them is obviously American foul brood. And in a nutshell, basically, the industry tells MPI they'd like to control this disease. There's, discussion between industry and government, and a structure is put in place, and MPI sort of, as minister, I agree to this, and then the industry effectively manages it. MPI sort of provides technical advice and other support as needed, and grants the sort of management agency, which is chaired by has an independent board on it, grants them powers under the Biosecurity Act to be able to manage that disease. And these national pest management plans are often different for various different diseases. So as a dairy farmer, the one I'm most familiar with over my lifetime has been the TB control program, which, again, slightly different from this, but it's a sort of plan that farmers, like all of my life, I've been paying TB levies. In fact, probably most of my parents' life, they've been paying TB levies into this, which manages the plan.
So, okay, so the National Pest Management Plan is actually, it's the industry itself has come up with this plan, and then
yes,
okay,
and in consultation with the government, and
So then, can I start also by asking them what powers do they have, the management agency? So do they have the ability to enter properties without permission and demand gear be burned within a week?
Yeah, look, they've granted certainly powers of entry under the under the Biosecurity Act. In terms of destruction, obviously that's different for each management plan, and it'll set out in the management plan, what needs to be done. Generally, I mean, what happens with AFB is, by and large, most of the inspection and destruction is the beekeepers themselves do it, and then the management agency are basically auditing them, how much of this disease have you had, have you destroyed the gear and the property associated with it, because, I know it seems heavy-handed, but basically once you get these spores into a hive, effectively it's doomed. It's all going to die off, and there's no cure. You've got to basically burn it out and, make sure it doesn't infect either your other hives or other people's hives, which is a real risk.
So the obligation then for beekeepers is for them to also watch out for it, is what you've just said for AFB, and then so you kind of give them a lot of. I mean, let's be honest, they've got to be honest with the agency. If they spot it, obviously
they've got mutual trust.
There's a bit of trust in there for that as well. You said that
it's good to have, I think, really good working relationships between these people. This is sort of only going to work if people are getting on with each other, and obviously when you get a bit of disagreement like we've got in this case, it gets quite challenging, obviously. Yep.
Look, Andrew, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I mean, you might not know the answer to it because, like I said, you're not part of you're the overall arching. But you know what? This guy says that he had thousands of boxes that were brand new and were never tested yet ordered to be destroyed. Does that sound excessive to you, or is this part of what they agreed to under this National Pest Management Plan?
Well, I think under the pest management, my understanding under the National Pest Management Plan is, you've got to destroy infected equipment as well. So, if he had infected equipment, like I said, it's a really highly contagious spore. Now, I don't know the details around how quickly it can spread or what is the situation where you've got old equipment nearby to new equipment. Does it spread rapidly? Obviously, taking a zero risk approach. And I think that might be something they might want to look at. I'm not an expert in it, but it's obviously heartbreaking that for this guy that he's had to do all that. But then again, the impacts of the disease wiping out other beekeepers is also heartbreaking. There's never any easy solutions in any of these disease management structures. There's always pain involved for farmers, growers, beekeepers, whatever it is. It's never particularly easy.
Having said this then, do you think it's time to maybe review the pest management plan? Is that something on your books?
Well, it was something way before. So early on when I got the role, one of the pieces of paper handed to me earlier this year was a request to review the National Pest Management Plan. So if the governing body wants to make changes to the pest management plan, then they have to ask me to okay a review of it. And so a review gets initiated, and obviously there's consultation. They talk to people. They look at the science behind the changes. So I understand actually the industry had asked for this early last year, and for some reason it just sat there, and then it got given to me, and I said, okay, yep, go for it. Yeah.
Okay.